Hey, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Welcome back. This is Force, and here today I'd like to have a discussion with you about Hearthstone's new player problem and why I think that could be resolved with formats. And there's actually a bunch of benefits that can come from that. So let's talk about just baseline what that problem is. Well, it's rather simple. Since the official launch in March of 2014, we have gotten new sets and adventures that have added more and more cards. And the more cards means a larger barrier to entry. So people just coming into the game now, or a month from now, or 5 months from now, they're gonna have a really hard time competing at a high level because it costs so much, or it will take so much time to accumulate the gold in order to purchase all of the cards that you need to play competitively. Now, there are certainly different deck options like the Zulok, for example, or even like Mech Mage that are relatively cheap that allow you to compete. But it doesn't make the new player experience any better knowing that they're missing out on so many legendaries, and they'd like to try all these different decks, but they're just sort of shoehorned into playing Zulok, for example, if they want to have any chance to reach a legendary. So what I think can solve this issue is having different game formats, basically taking a note from where Magic the Gathering has been very successful. So let's just do a quick breakdown here. Classic Hearthstone had 245 cards. Now I can tell you from my own experience, I spent about $250 on Classic Hearthstone until I got everything in the set. And then we had the release, of course, of Naxxramas, which you could purchase wholly for $24.99. And then Goblins vs. Gnomes came out, adding 123 new cards, but only being available through packs. So again, I spent around $200 to unlock a vast majority of those. And then, of course, we just recently had Blackrock Mountain that added 31 cards, a little bit over Naxxramas' 30, with a similar cost of $24.99 to get all of the wings. Now, all of this that I'm talking about, yes, it can be purchased with gold, but that isn't really a resolution for the new players coming into the game at all, because that just takes time. It takes time to accumulate all those golds, and they just got here. Certainly people should put in their time and or money to be competitive, but I'm thinking more 6 months, a year from now, 2 years from now, if we just keep adding to this list, that's going to be a major issue. Now, I am not talking about removing these cards, but I'm talking about formats. Now, Magic the Gathering, as an example, and where we're going to be pulling from, has a wide array of formats, but I want to focus on two in particular. Number one, there is the Vintage or Legacy formats, which they basically allow you to use most of the cards in all of the sets since the game is inception, barring certain restrictions depending on the format. And then there's Standard, which this is where I think that Hearthstone sort of should shift into. You can have your Vintage and Legacy, where we can play with classic cards, Naxxramas, GVG, and Blackrock Mountain, and then any upcoming sets and adventures released in the future. But I think there should also be a standard block, a standard format in which you can only use the most recent adventures and or expansions. So for example, let's say next Blizzard decides to release an Encourage themed expansion or adventure. Well, to go along with that, they could cycle out the classic set. So then from that point forward, we would be using Goblins vs. Gnomes, Naxxramas, Blackrock Mountain, and AQ. It's something similar along these lines. Essentially how it functions in Magic is they use the past year to year and a half worth of time of cards in the standard format, which this allows new players coming into the game to not have to go back 10 years and purchase these Magic cards that cost $400, $500, even more dollars, but they can play competitively. They can play in a format that allows them to compete at a high level. So if Magic sort of implemented something like this, it would do two things. It would solve, at least somewhat, that new player problem, and them not having to go back to classic Hearthstone and purchase a couple $100 or spend hundreds and hundreds of hours to get all of those cards. They could just purchase the most recent sets and adventures, still play competitively, and then on the flip side, something that I think all Hearthstone players would enjoy is that if we had these separate formats, the metagame would completely shift up. If we had a standard style format and we were just playing with AQ and Goblins vs. Gnomes, Naxxramas, and Blackrock Mountain, think about how much the game would have to shift. Maybe we wouldn't see this plethora of Face Hunter and Zulocks anymore. We do obviously see different new style decks come in with these expansions, but in many cases, it's just the same decks with slight alterations. I would say with the exception of Mech Mage, we're more or less seeing the same thing in the meta that we've been seeing for the past year now. So to have those separate formats, and that doesn't mean that all of your old cards, you hardcore Hearthstone players that have been playing from the beginning, are going to be worthless. It just means you'll be playing in a format that includes everything, and then new players can play in the most recent format, utilizing just the most recent sets. I really do hope that Blizzard does decide to implement something like this for Hearthstone, because again, it'll mix things up, it'll make the gameplay more interesting, shift up the meta, and it's also going to solve at least somewhat that new player problem of this insurmountable list of cards that just keep growing year after year. Alright guys, I'd love to know what you think about this discussion in the comment section below. I'm actually really excited and hopeful that they will do something like this. I just think it's a fantastic idea. So thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments in the comment section below. Hope you guys have a great afternoon. Take it easy.